Hello and welcome to another edition of Movie Night. As usual, it's been a while since our last upload, but today we're here for another thrilling film discussion. So I'm joined by Odysseus today, um, and today we're going to be discussing a new release, a new Netflix film called 365 Days, and it's a Polish film, but actually some of it's in Polish language, some of it's in Italian, but most of it's actually in English. And it's been creating a lot of controversy recently because it basically involves a plot where a woman is kidnapped by an Italian gangster and held against her will uh, for 365 days until she falls in love with him. And lots of people have found this controversial due to the themes of kidnapping and a lot of the gender issues related to it. There's been a petition uh, of thousands of people signing, trying to get it removed from Netflix. The singer Duffy was very critical of it. So we both watched it. We both thought it'd be an interesting thing to discuss on here and tell people what we thought about it. So, Odysseus, what was your general impressions and thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think that it's sort of. I mean, first of all, it's a reasonably entertaining, sort of well-made film. I think that it's. I mean, obviously, like the bulk of this, first off, talking about the movie, but the vast majority of this will be about like what we think about the issue. Um, of like the discussion about all of the different sort of ideas that it perpetuates and that kind of thing. But just to talk about it as a movie. Um, I dislike any movie that's sort of painfully unrealistic,
Mm.
and there were parts of that sort of fell into this. I know that I'm very different to this. Like personally, I hate every sci-fi movie I've ever watched, and so it is partly down to my taste. But I do just hate it when I know that something would just never happen in real life. And obviously, this is going with spoilers, so I'll start now. So the one is that just how quickly she sort of accepts it, like if you kidnapped pretty much anyone, like I know that the Stockholm syndrome is obviously a thing, and we've seen that like when you look at various. For anyone that doesn't know, Stockholm syndrome basically means like when you get some attachment to your kidnapper and you're not actually super desperate to leave, even if you are still imprisoned and you aren't happy. Um, and even though that does happen, like with this movie, it basically happens like pretty much within days. Like she's immediately on board, whereas I feel like if you kidnapped anyone, they would not be on board within like 2 days. It's just
Yeah,
a
yeah,
bit ridiculous.
yeah, yeah.
I think that they do things within days that usually would happen probably within years of kidnapping. I mean, no kidnapping expert, but that's sort of one issue that is sort of unrealistic there. And then, like, otherwise, I think that it is fairly. I mean, I think it's slightly confusing at the start the way that they sort of have the whole, the way they bring it together. With the business meeting in like I think in Warsaw and in can't remember where the man is at the start, but it's somewhere else in the world.
Right, right.
Um, it's a little bit sort of strange to start with, but generally it is fairly captivating film. I think, even if it does have some quite strange scenes, like I'd say they really did go into town on the sex scene. It's fair to say it
Yeah, I
was a
mean,
very
at times it is.
magnificent.
Yeah, yeah. It's closer to kind of softcore porn at times than like actual filmmaking. But yeah, yeah. Um,
But no, sorry, go on.
yeah, no, no. Go on. You finish what you're saying.
Yeah. So basically, overall, from the perspective of a film, if we were pretending there was nothing controversial about it, I would say that it's like sort of an okay film because it's entertaining, but it is flawed and a bit strange. um, so I wouldn't even praise it that much, but at least it's watchable, I guess.
Yeah, well, I would say it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but I think there's yeah the questionable aspects of it make it significantly worse. I mean, it's essentially a kind of uh, Beauty and the Beast retelling, I suppose, in the kind of way that she's kind of meant to make him a better guy, almost. So it's kind of Beauty and the Beast meets 50 Shades of Grey kind of thing. Um,
Mm.
but in terms of the film itself, although it was watchable, I did get kind of bored towards the end.
Mm.
And as you say, it is completely realistic at times. I mean, one thing I thought is that if you imagined it as if you imagined that he looks very different, if he looked like, if he was like really fat or really horrible, or all the kind of things like this, the film would be very different. Like he would. It would be a horror film essentially if he didn't look like a male model, like like. But um, it's not really something that I could really recommend to that many people. Like, if you want to see people having sex, you can probably find that elsewhere. But and like, if you want to watch a crime romance film, there's probably better versions out there too. Um, but yeah, that's what I say. So I think it's a good idea if we bring on the discussion about the problematic aspects of the film. So, what did you think about the whole kind of, well, like the kind of themes of the fact that she is kidnapped by him, like the kind of gender roles within the film? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think okay. So there's a number. Okay, so I think there's probably mainly two big issues with the film. The first one is one that's typical of a lot of films, and that's this whole the man should chase, and when the man chases, he eventually will get her, and then they will both be happy. So that's the first issue. That's an issue in a lot of films. And the second one is obviously the whole theme of kidnapping and dominance is much more specific to this film. Just to touch upon the first one, this is relevant because this is very applied because I was reading a post. I mean, anyone that is sort of into like who goes to a British university will know about these sort of anonymous sort of confession pages, and one that was publicly posted but anonymously was by a girl who was talking about how she has a friend who just won't get the message that she's not into him and that kind of thing. And in the comments, it's sort of basically people sort of saying that this does come from a lot of movies, how a lot of men basically have the idea from watching movies just like this one that basically if a girl tells you no, like you should basically just keep going after her.
Mm.
And in this film again, like he does get there. He obviously they're really happy. They're going to get married. They're going to have a baby. Obviously, it has a different ending, but that's broadly the theme. And that's something that is like I think there's a very fair argument to say that this kind of thing is harmful because it does perpetuate an idea that basically means that people in real life, like men, do in some ways harass, in some ways not harass, but more just sort of make women feel really uncomfortable. Even if harassment maybe isn't like exactly what you call it, but yeah, I think that's something that this movie, like a lot of movies, is really guilty of, and it's really problematic because obviously, if we want to, if someone's not interested, you should just leave it basically. And the second thing is more.
I'll just come in and before we move on to the second point, I just say, yeah, I completely agree with that, and I say I think it's particularly in relation to this film, the fact that both of the main characters are both like attractive models really puts it in. And say if he was depicted as a really ugly, horrible person, it would make the film a significantly different tone. But to me, the message is still the same. Like, it doesn't really matter what you look like. You shouldn't be behaving like this anyway. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that just one thing that actually is linked to your point on that is maybe there's also like an additional thing I'm thinking of is sort of the entitlement aspect. Like when you think about it, it's the fact that he sort of supposedly knows from the start in inverted commas that they'll get together. I guess there is this idea that he's a good-looking guy. He's basically like entitled to a woman. So another issue with film. But then in terms of the kidnapping, like I know that it was criticised by Duffy for sort of romanticising kidnapping and sort of glorifying it in some sense. And I think that it is a real problem. I think that one issue, like one big issue I have with this, is how so much of it is sort of through either the lens of basically just the man, because obviously the film is very centered around him. I feel like if you consider how many of his associates, friends, his father, the opening scene with him, like I feel it's very strongly that he's the main character really, and the second thing is the sort of the whole love element, which obviously with when those two things are the main thing, it basically completely sort of puts so much lower in the pecking order this like the woman's life, which something that's just sort of so less considered, and it does just sort of make like say that she's just so much less important, and that's what in many ways does like facilitate this idea that the kidnapping is like glorified. I think the difficult thing, I think it's a lot more difficult to explain, even though I can say sort of why it's problematic, it's maybe slightly more difficult. I'd be interested to see what you say about how you link it more to the real world. Because I think with the first example, like I mentioned, it is something that we kind of know a lot about that phenomenon, because this is maybe more specific to this film, the glorifying kidnapping, why that's the issue. Because in fairness, obviously, I don't think either of us saying that anyone's going to watch this film and kidnap someone. Although to be fair, some films actually, I guess maybe, but most people won't, obviously. So,
but
I don't know what you.
Well, yeah, I'd agree in the sense of that. Yeah, it is completely unrealistic in terms of how it's portraying this kidnapping, in terms of the fact that she basically falls in love with him immediately. I can see what you mean in that I don't think anybody would watch this and then go out and try and kidnap someone. But it is still, as you say, it links to these more wider ideas about sort of entitlement and the way both men and women are supposed to behave. And it's kind of like, it's, at times the way they act with each other is very toxic, and he's often very like physically, not quite physically abusive, but almost like, he's very handsy with her. Often at the start, particularly, she doesn't necessarily seem like she's that like welcoming of that as well. And I don't think that that's something that you should almost like it, because it almost sets it up as if she knows at the beginning that she kind of doesn't want it, but equally she knows deep down that she does want it, and that if she just lets him sort of be physical with her, that's what's best for her. But I think that's a very dangerous message to send out to people, because you can't just assume that a woman would really want you to be like physically harmful to you just because you'd enjoy it. If you kind of get what I'm saying there. But I mean, and yeah, I would say definitely that his portrayal of kidnapping is sort of dangerous, but I don't necessarily think I think it's almost so far removed from reality that it's not necessarily actually going to encourage that kind of behavior. But I don't know if anyone's actually accusing it of that, to be fair.
Yeah, just one thing sort of coming on, like one I'd mentioned that I've sort of come to mind, because you talked about the like the actual interactions of them as well as just like the main thing. One interaction that, or one more scene actually that's really problematic that I just sort of remembered is the one where, do you know when he sort of like ties the woman he's kidnapped to the bed, and then presumably as a prostitute to basically have like oral sex, and that's really problematic. The thing, the main problem there, and again it focuses on what I was saying about how it's just so centered around him. It's like, if you think of the woman prostitute in that situation, she's just like in this the way in like the narrative of the script, she's just such a side, like such a distraction, and it's just so all about him. It's all about how,
and it's almost made out as if like the prostitute's enjoying the situation, like, and that she's having a great time. It's showing what glamorous life it is. And I'm sure if you actually looked into what prostitution's like, I'm certain it's not actually like that. And that's again a very dangerous message that you'd be wanting to send out to people. Because there's a similar interaction earlier on when he's on the plane as well. And he kind of forces that woman to do it, and it kind of shows her at the end like smiling as if like, I really enjoyed that, when he almost forces her to do it. And it's such an odd thing to do. Like, you should be arrested for doing that, like it's not something that should be condoned at all.
So to sort of like try and, okay, so we've obviously sort of labeled some of the more, the negative issues, to try and see from, because I think that what they're trying to do, like the people who made this film, I think they're trying to be really sort of creative and original. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think that they got it quite badly wrong. Certainly in terms of, like, the specifics and the things that we've talked about and how they're problematic. But I think that what they've tried to do is to do something creative where it's like a kidnapping, but obviously, it's not sort of by complete force. Like, do you think that there's any sort of, I don't know, like credit in some ways, or sort of, well, if not credit, but like we can try and see what we're trying to do in terms of coming up with this sort of kidnapping that was not like forced, and maybe more like a complex issue where you see them as not a full-on bad person.
Well, I'm aware that the film is based on a book. I think a Polish book that is apparently was a big seller in Poland. But certainly with the way I think the film's made, I think it's made in a very cynical way, in that it feels like it's made for couples with certain things to appeal to certain people. Like in the film, there's about 3 different montages of her going shopping. And you're just like, obviously it feels like the filmmakers put into like Google, it's like, oh, what would appeal to women? Oh, make sure she goes shopping. And it feels like then they went, so what would the guys appreciate? Oh, he's a gangster. He has a nice car and all this stuff. And it's like, and it just feels like it's really cynically put together. In a way that it's made, it makes you as an audience member feel like you're an idiot, because you're being pandered to by this kind of stuff. So, I mean, I suppose there's some credit for them trying to do provide some kind of erotic drama, give it more of a story, I guess. And it certainly feels more like it's filthier than sort of something like 50 Shades of Grey or something like that, from what I'm aware. I haven't actually seen 50 Shades of Grey, to be fair, but so I suppose there's some credit there, but I can't really give them much credit in how the film's put together. I mean, the script at times is really terrible. There's some really, really clunky lines in it about just, like, oh, I can't wait to go shopping or buy some shoes or this kind of thing. You just think like, oh, that kind of stuff. So I can't really give the filmmakers that much credit, but I mean, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, actually, just on the topic issue, like another thing that's just sort of come to mind when you think about it is how sort of, I guess, another issue with the genders is the fact that like the man is portrayed as pursuing this sort of noble goal of love, whereas she's like, saying, oh, like within a couple of scenes, she's like sort of happy to just spend all his money on shopping, which I guess is another way that it sort of devalues her, basically. In terms of the like the way that they've gone about it, I think that the only thing that I would say is I think that they've tried, or whether it's the book that does this or whatever, I think that they've tried to go for in the way that movies have sort of moved on from like traditional great good people and terrible villains. They've sort of tried to get that sort of modern trend of sort of being in between and a sort of more complex thing. And so they've tried that. I think, and I don't know, I think you'd obviously have to change a lot about it to make it work. But the thing is, I think because of because we've obviously pinpointed a number of scenes and different things, and even in the storyline, it's problematic. So they messed it up so much it's difficult to imagine. But as in, like, in some ways, if you basically changed everything about the film, you could theoretically try and do something that's like a sort of complex plot. That's what I think they were going for. Yeah. But then it basically changed the whole film because there are just so many bits of it that are really problematic.
Yeah. You removed all the problematic scenes, there'd be nothing left of the film. Yeah.
And also, I think the fact that it's a problematic storyline as well. I don't know if there's a way that they've adapted the storyline to maybe still be about captivity, but not like romanticizing from the male perspective.
No. Somehow, like, other than somehow making it more believable, like maybe like making it a longer time from when she fell in love with him to, because you can start off you can start off with characters not liking each other at the beginning and then growing to like each other. That happens in every film ever. But like it's the way in this film she basically goes from like hating the fact that he's kidnapped her to seeing his abs and then being like, well, I guess everything's all right now, you know, like you know. So maybe there is some way of adapting this story better, but I'm not sure. I was going to say again, give a spoiler warning here to people. Anyone who's watching, anyone who wants to watch the film. I was going to say, give a spoiler warning. What did you think about the end of the film? Because spoiler warning. At the end of the film, she dies basically. She's killed by one of the rival gangsters, and the last scene is just him like looking upset. So did you think that was an appropriate ending, or?
To clarify, was she killed by one of the rival gangsters or one of like her original boyfriend's associates?
I just assumed that it was one of the rival gangsters. I don't think it was actually implied, but yeah, maybe that's I don't know. Like maybe that's up to the interpretation. I've got the Wikipedia page up here. Actually, I could see what that says. Yeah, it says Mario receives a phone call from an informant that the rival mafia family is about to kill Laura.
Okay.
So I guess that, yeah. But what did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that it's I mean, if you were to try and look at it with the deeper meaning again, you can make the point that again, like, the only reason she's killed, like, now that we know that it's from a rival mafia family, the only reason she's killed is to get at him, which again, like, is completely devaluing of her position. But generally, I think that it's not like, I think that it's not a particularly great ending. It's sort of it's okay, but I guess the thing is, because I wasn't that invested in the film in the first place, like I kind of knew it was really
But by that point in the film, I was almost like quite happy for it to be over. So like you know, not that it was, you know, I was almost like, you know, just need to see what happens really, like how are they going to resolve this. But I don't think it's necessarily the worst way of doing it. I assumed that one of the main characters would die, but I wasn't certain which one it is. It actually says on the Wikipedia page that they, following the success of the film, they were thinking about making a sequel, but I'm not exactly sure. I'm not exactly sure how that sequel would work, and I'm not exactly sure whether that would still happen, you know, following all the sort of backlash of the film. It just says work on a sequel film is planned but has been delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm guessing certain scenes in this film definitely couldn't work with social distancing. So for sure. Yeah, good. No, go on. You said, yeah.
No, yeah, I do. I think at least, I mean, the only good thing about the ending is at least it's not a happy ending. Like at least,
yes. I think it's better than if they'd have like lived happily ever after and had the kid or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
that would have been a bit.
So, did we have anything more in terms of the discussion of the film? I thought that like the last thing I'd discuss was, or we could discuss would be, like, what do you do about these? Because obviously some people have said that you should ban them.
That was the only other thing I was going to say is, with this petition saying it should be removed from Netflix, what do you think about that? Yeah, did you think it should be removed or not? That's what I was going to say. But yeah,
I mean, I don't think that it should be banned, because I think that would be beyond like what's reasonable. Because the thing is, the film, you know, we see things removed from Netflix that are like, you know, in, you know, sort of different contexts, things that are essentially like racist or sexist or, you know, totally outdated and shouldn't be consumed. And this is the thing, which is, I don't think, even though this perpetuates really negative and harmful ideas that we've talked about, I think that to take something down like this, that's more like damaging, but not sort of fully, like, I guess, discriminatory, or it sort of is in a way, but it's I don't know, it's not quite on the level that I think it should be taken down. I think that would be taking it too far in terms of censorship. I think the bigger problem for me is I think that something like this probably shouldn't be allowed not should be allowed to them by force, but as in the directors and whoever it is that makes films. Basically, I think that they should look at themselves a bit more with a lot more care. We already know how sort of like problematic and to some extent misogynistic certain things about the filmmaking industry are. We all know about the people, sex predators and that kind of thing. That I think that they have a responsibility to say, like, actually, this is really negative, and we should create a film that doesn't perpetuate stereotypes, because this is obviously something that's new, and it's only just been made. Like, I think that it's not something that should really have ever been made in 2020. But now that it has been made, I don't think that it's right to just take it down.
Yeah, I agree with you there saying about how you're surprised it's made. It does feel like a film that should have come out a long time ago, like with a lot of ideas in it. But in terms of what I would say there is, I would agree. I don't think it should be removed. And I think it's partly because on the basis of what we said is that it is so far removed from any kind of reality that it's hard to think that someone would watch it and, actually kidnap someone, for example. But it's certainly something that the harmful aspects are like a negative influence. And I think that it's something that filmmakers should think about when they're making films, and think about, the way that they portray relationships and, masculinity, femininity, these kind of things, and whether you're reinforcing these kind of negative ideas that influence, because ultimately, these things will influence how, men try to meet women or behave within their normal relationships, which is something which could be potentially damaging for people. So no, I don't think it should be removed, but it's something that I think people should bear in mind for sure in the future, because it does feel like a real out of place in the modern world, really, this entire story. But there's clearly an appetite for it. I mean, it's been really successful. It's been in the top 10 in the UK, in the America, all kinds of places like this. So, people have obviously responded to it, even if critics haven't.
I think that one thing I would say though is that, I mean, like, I don't know about you personally, I'd go as far as say I probably wouldn't have watched this film if it wasn't controversial, to be honest. Like,
Yeah,
the reason that I
yeah.
want I've read that there was controversy about it.
Mm.
That's like another problem, I guess, how that attracts. I think, and that's another thing. Cause I was also going to say, I think that in some ways it's kind of better to watch being aware, as I guess we were, because we talked about this before watching it, and if we're aware of the fact that it's been controversial. In some ways, it's a lot less harmful if you're watching it with that lens on, as opposed to just going to it just as a film to be entertained by. Because I always think that watching something knowing it's problematic is a lot less harmful than when people are just sort of just taking something in. But then again, like, when you make people aware of the controversy, you promote the film in itself anyway, which is, has problems of its own. It's just free publicity. So yeah, I think that really for me, it's the whole issue with the film is more, it's just a symptom of basically the out of touchness and the completely negative, like, gender relations of much of the movie industry, because like we've already said, it shouldn't really be made, because it is just like, it's so problematic in so many ways that we've discussed in quite a lot of detail.
Yeah. The only reason it does get made is because clearly people want to watch it. So, but yeah. But that that's not necessarily a best reason for doing it. Yeah, but yeah, and I agree with you there. The only reason I would have watched it is because I heard about how controversial it is. So maybe that is why it's been so popular. I'm sure that's what the filmmakers would have wanted. Yeah, well, I think that we had a very, very good discussion on that. I know that Ed, our fellow movie night co-host, also watched the film, and I think he was going to share his opinions on it at some point later on, I think. So you can keep an eye out for that. Did you have anything else to add to the discussion there, Odysseus? Or
No, not really. Just thanks for watching or listening.
Yeah, yeah. I think I would agree the same there. Yeah. Thanks for listening. Bye.